Good day, and welcome to Analysis Weekly Wraps. I am Web Governor, and this week what we're going to do is we're going to cover the latest jobs notes from the US. I'll update on what's been happening in the tariff situation. Then we're going to look at tech earnings, particularly from Palantir, which is the biggest holding in my AI portfolio. And finally, we're going to look at the release of GPT-5. For those that don't know, GPT-5 is the latest model from OpenAI, which is by far the leader in terms of usage in the AI space, and this is their flagship model. So let's start up with the let's start with the US jobs numbers. So we had US jobs numbers coming out end of last week. They were a significant disappointment for the last month, but in addition to that, there was a significant revision down for the previous 2 months as well. In total, including the disappointment for last month plus the revisions, negative revisions for the last 2 months, the total number was in excess of 200,000 jobs that were, less than had been anticipated. Now, what's important about this is that not just is this a big number and it's disappointing and so on, it shows the US economy is weakening, and which is going to translate into a bigger chance of US rate cuts, and we saw that happen in the bond market. But what we saw from the Trump administration in terms of the reaction to the numbers, I think is quite surprising. It's unusual, to say the least. He fired the bureaucrat basically in charge of, doing the survey. This is a remarkable, event. I can't recall like a major economy doing that. This is something a third world country does. Fire the messenger. Now, the argument he gives forward is that this is because he believes that this was deliberate sabotage. So somehow this administrator believed that, let me just inflate these numbers in a fake way and then give a huge surprise downward, and that's going to be shock the market and embarrass Trump. Put it that way. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. I doubt it's true, but let me explain to you why it's likely that it's not true and what to understand just how surveys are done and so on. Now, let's just say you do a survey. Okay, you do a survey of a particular thing. Then you basically use that survey and pass information about the particular thing that's larger than the survey, because that's how surveys work. You take a small sample and then you approach that, and you say, okay, this is the new situation. Okay, what you rely on is that the underlying thing that you're measuring, the characteristics is not changed. Let me explain to you what I mean by that. Let's just say you do a blood test on a human being. Okay, and there's a certain level of say hormone in that blood. And that hormone indicates, for instance, a healthy person. Then you do the same blood test on a elephant, for instance. That elephant will have a different blood profile, and therefore, when you basically want to measure if that hormone level is healthy or not, you can't rely on the human survey. If the underlying thing you're measuring, the human versus elephant, has changed, you can't use that survey, that sample of blood, to get the same kind of outlook in terms of the health or whatever of the thing. The US economy has changed in very dramatic ways over the last little while. 2 ways I can mention very easily is, firstly, technology. We've seen the emergence of AI, and that's obviously affecting jobs in the US. We're starting to see that happen already. The second thing is tariffs are coming into play in a very big way in a market that has not experienced these tariffs and this kind of levels from decades. So when you do a survey in this market, you are dealing with a very different labor market than you were for the last several decades. That means that a survey that usually says a certain number in the survey correlates to a certain number of jobs, up or down, that relationship is not as stable as it once was, and therefore it's no surprise that when you do these surveys that they are giving you results that are not as accurate as they once had been. So that is a simple explanation of what's happening here. Now, if you go off and you fire somebody for giving you bad information, guess what happens? Well, either you basically get another honest person there, it's going to give you bad information, you're going to keep on firing them, or eventually you start getting a person that's sycophantic, that's going to lie, that's going to give you information that you want to hear. And in that case, you stop being able to know what the real thing on the ground looks like. This is a problem that dictators have had over many, many years. I mean, you can look at Chairman Mao, where he complained about the fact that no one was telling him there was a famine because people were just too scared of him. So they kept on saying, no, the results of the harvest was super, super great. It was unbelievable harvest that we were having, bumper crops. Meanwhile, there was not enough crops in the country and people were starving to death. But the head of the country did not know that because nobody was brave enough to tell them the truth. We've seen that happen in many communist countries, many fascist dictatorships, when the leader in charge is basically punishing those that tell him the truth. Eventually, he starts getting lies, and those lies mean that he can no longer rely on the data, and then they make the wrong decisions. Okay, and this is a very big danger in the US. Look, it's not going to happen just now, but I think depending on who he replaces this person with, down the line, we are going to find more and more people being put into places of power, not because of their expertise, but because of their willingness to please the leader, and that's going to be very, very negative for the US data collection facilities and the ability of us to trust US numbers, quite frankly, and also should be known for the ability of the US government to make the right choices. We've seen even in China, which is a pretty sophisticated economy, there's been many, many years where we doubt the Chinese GDP numbers just because of the fact that there's big incentives for the people collecting those numbers to lie. Okay. Now, moving on to tariffs. The US is ramping up tariffs against places like India. And the reason for this is that I think that, the US the good Trump administration at least wants to have some big wins going into the next little while. There is a bit of a conspiracy theory out there that they're trying to distract from, personal information around, the Jeffrey Epstein files. I'm not going to go into detail on that, but let's just say there's theories that he wants to basically make sure that the attention is focused on other things. But there's also the real, underlying truth of the matter is that Trump is not afraid to go after allies, and India is an ally to the US. There's a pretty strong relationship personally between Trump and Narendra Modi from India. There is, significant amount of, Indian diaspora in the US. And if you had to look at it, for instance, in terms of just the impact, this diaspora is very wealthy, very influential. It's the richest ethnic group in the country, by the way. I mean, the Indian diaspora in the US is by far, we're not even close, the highest earning ethnic group in the country. So we're talking a very large, very wealthy diaspora. You really don't want to mess with these kind of people normally. And normally you would have a similar situation as you had with, for instance, Israel or some other parties where, people or the politicians in charge don't really go after the home country in such a strong way. India is a pretty big, trade partner for the US. I think top 10, but not, by many means the biggest. And I do think that this is one of the things that's going to be very difficult to sort out. Why? Because one of the things that Trump is going after is agricultural subsidies. Now, India has the weirdest economy in the world. I think the stats, and this is true, around this is that more than half of the world's farmers are in India. Why? Because India has a huge agricultural sector and is incredibly inefficient, massively subsidized by the government, a massively powerful agricultural sector, and politically virtually impossible for any kind of government to go after. So this big protected government sector employing a huge chunk of the population of the country, far larger than you'd find in China or in the US or any kind of other country in the world, basically. That huge farming sector cannot allow US imports of agricultural goods to come in without tariffs, without regulation, without restriction. It would devastate that sector. Like I said, more than half of the world's farmers are in India. It's because they are so inefficient, and the only way to basically produce enough food is to have so many people working the land. They are, by definition, much less efficient than what's available in the US and other parts of the world. US farmers with modern techniques and efficient farming techniques, etc., would be able to undercut prices in India easily, and that would cause massive devastation to the sector. So it's going to be very difficult for Modi to basically make an agreement around that. Now, what is the outcome going to be? We haven't seen that yet, but I think this could be a pretty big issue between those two countries. Now, moving on to some of our tech results. So we're going to start with, we'll look at particularly Palantir. For those that don't know, Palantir is kind of like an AI company, a tech company that's focused on information gathering, etc., mostly in the government sector. It was formed by Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel, if you watched The Social Network, you know that he was one of the key people when it came to the forming of Facebook. He's basically very strongly involved in US politics. J.D. Vance, the US Vice President, is pretty much a protege of his. He hired him, initially funded his fund, J.D. Vance's fund, then funded J.D. Vance's run for the US Senate, and was probably involved as well in Trump picking J.D. Vance to be his vice president. So, huge links between the company and government. But the results, there's two ways to look at this. First, the results were very good. We're talking huge profit margins. We're talking huge increases in revenue. But on the other hand, this company is pretty highly priced at the moment. We're talking a P ratio in excess of 600. You know what I mean? This is a very, very, well-priced stock, considering the revenue coming in, etc. Now, the question is it possible for this to continue? Now, like I said, we do have Palantir in our portfolio. It is something we bought, near the start of the portfolio, and we've held it on for the last few years. We've trimmed our position slightly a little while ago, but even despite that, it's by far our largest holding in the portfolio. Not because we bought a huge chunk at the start. We just bought a 4-5% holding at the start, but we got a massive increase in basically the valuation of the thing. So even though the portfolio as a whole is up, in excess of 70%, so we started off, Palantir has increased by so much. It's increased its position in the portfolio by more than 3 times. Even in the portfolio that's growing 70%, it's up more than 3 times, just showing how well it's performed. Now, the question then becomes, can this continue? Now, I do think that what Palantir is doing here can easily continue. The reason being is that, for multiple reasons, they have a very strong in with the US government as well as other governments globally. They have an advantage that, it's going to be very difficult for others to catch up with. But in addition to that, it's a market that not many other companies want to compete in. Look at the major players in the AI sector, the Microsofts, the Googles, the Amazons, the Metas, and so on. I know we have seen in the past where, like Amazon, for instance, as Jeff Bezos put his foot down about certain things. But we've seen a great deal of reticence among these companies to really get involved in real, hard military work for the US government and other governments out there. Like the whole Google "don't be evil" thing. There's a bit of a left-wing kind of hippie kind of culture in Silicon Valley. So companies that are in the tech sector that are willing to kind of buck that trend, Palantir, Angelo, not listed yet, but if it ever does list, we'll be looking at it for our portfolio as well. These companies have an advantage. Not only are they, whatever an underlying ability they have, but they also are competing in a space that's in a certain way artificially, sparsely populated, because many companies don't want to be dealing with the hassle of dealing with the US government, not just because they want to deal with the US government, because there's lots of money to be made there, but because their workers, their employees are going to cause a big ruckus about it. So, very highly priced stock. Are we going to decide as to how much of it we're still going to hold going forward? We're not going to obviously sell the entire position. It's been a very profitable position for us. I still think there's a good stock for the portfolio to hold, but we might just decide to trim it a bit, especially considering the recent rise and the current valuations, which I think are going to be very hard to meet, though it's possible. Now, finally, let's do a deep dive into GPT-5. And GPT-5 was released on Thursday this week. It was widely anticipated. So what can I tell you about it? Well, first impressions is it's better than what's come before, but it isn't a quantum leap better than everything else. What do I mean by that? So I've talked about this in the past. Right now, whichever model comes out in the next month, whatever model comes out a month from now, for instance, will probably beat GPT-5, beat Gemini next level, beat the next level of Grok, beat the next level or whatever. It's probably going to be either on par or beating GPT-5. If it's 2 or 3 months from now, it's almost a guarantee. Even something like an open source model from like China might be comparable to GPT-5 in say 5 or 6 months from now. Okay. The more time you have going by, the better these models are. We are in a phase where technology is improving at an incredible rate, where the money being pumped into these companies is an incredibly high level, and the newest model, like for like, is probably going to be the best model out there. So we haven't had a new model being released in a while. By a while, I mean a few weeks, and so therefore we are seeing GPT-5 like getting close to the top of these things. Now, Elon Musk claims that Grok is better than the current level of GPT-5 being released. In some ways, that is true. By some benchmarks, it does beat it. But for whatever reason, be it maybe the safety training, be it the user interface, be it the comfort people have of using GPT 5 or 4, whatever. Historically, we have seen that whatever Grok's benchmarks are, generally the impression of users is not quite as good. So, for example, Grok recently ranked number 1 in benchmarks, but number 60 something in terms of perception, in terms of how good it was. Maybe this is a case of people not being comfortable using the model yet. Maybe it's a case of some anti-Elon Musk stuff, but it's also the case that maybe this working towards the test or sending towards the test. If you train a model to basically hit the benchmark, it'll be better at the benchmarks than it is at just doing the job. That could be it as well. But anyway, whatever the reason, Grok 4 Heavy apparently is comparable, or in some cases better than GPT-5. And Musk said that, but an engineer from GPT-5 came out and said, this isn't our best model. GPT-5 is just the model that we are ready to give to the market. We have a GPT-6 that's already being trained, and the one after that is in training at the moment. So what we are seeing right now is not even the best model. This brings us to a point I want to mention about AI at the moment. Grok is able to catch up, able to keep up with what's happening with OpenAI and other models out there. And one of the ways it's doing it is being fast and loose with regards to safety. Not just in, for instance, the safety of the model, but just how they're operating. For instance, other companies out there have things like zero carbon or carbon neutral policies. So Microsoft is looking at other ways in which to basically power its plants than just normal coal power, maybe doing offsets, etc., to kind of make it carbon neutral. What does Elon Musk do? He goes and builds massive gas turbines, and basically puts his plant where there's available natural gas and just pumps them out, the energy out of this thing, and just goes from there. Massively inefficient. Some of these things are mobile things, so they're not even at the size that's the best efficiency. But it was fast, it was quick, it allowed you to catch up quicker. The next thing is that Grok lets you do things that other models don't let you do. I won't go into detail about this, but let's just say if you ask certain things of other models and you ask certain things of Grok, other models will refuse it, and Grok will probably say yes, including things that are obviously not safe for work and stuff. This allows Grok to really catch up quite quickly. It may be the thing that gives it the advantage if all things being equal, Grok is slightly behind GPT-5. But GPT-5 will tell you no for certain things, and Grok will tell you yes. Maybe you want to have Grok anyway, just because it gives you what you want, as opposed to be saying no, I don't think it's safe for you to have this stuff. So that is the ability that's being granted to Grok, or the superpower is granted to Grok, allowing you to catch up and to compete against what's happening with OpenAI. This is really a race to the bottom. The safest model out there, the safest company out there is a company called Anthropic. They've been Claude. They are falling behind. OpenAI is not quite as safe. Maybe of the models, the other big models out there, I would say Gemini is probably, that's DeepMind is also pretty safe. Then I would say OpenAI, and up there is also Llama. But out of the edge is Elon Musk with Grok. The fact that he's been able to be successful as he is does mean that we are likely to see quicker releases, less focus on safety, less focus on basically social responsibility or whatever you want to call it, and this would result in better and quicker progress, but it could also result in, I think, far greater risks from these models, because when these models can do things that GPT-5 can tell you how to build a bomb. If you took out the safety off it, it allow you to plan a terrorist attack. It can allow you to go out and figure out, go to the supermarket and how to make chemical weapons that could basically kill hundreds of people if you wanted to. What stops you from doing that is that there are safety things in there that let you do that. It stops you from doing dangerous things. It stops you from doing things that are considered to be bad. If you reduce those safety protocols, even though on the surface it might seem that you can't do it, the less safety protocols you have, the more likely you are to be able to jailbreak these models, and the danger that comes from it is quite significant. So yeah, GPT-5 came out, best model as expected, but the fact that Grok is still pretty close to it indicates that any focus on safety is probably hampering your progress going forward. Thanks for having me. I look forward to speaking again next week. Cheers.